I always kind of get a little excited to see things go over a cliff, which is deranged.
You've got beltway poisoning.
I do, but Erin, you forget that you are podcasting with the person who wrote the scripts for the White House operators when we did shut the government down. So I get a little adrenaline rush when I hear this about to happen.
All right, Alyssa, we've got to talk about something else that when I first read it, I was like, this can't be real.
It's real. It's real. Over the weekend, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson announced a temporary agreement because that's what government's about to go lights out again. It's called a continuing resolution or a CR or kicking the can that will extend all government funding through December 20th. Nothing like going over the cliff at Christmas, and avoid having a government shutdown during election season. But the budget is missing a key component that both Johnson and Trump previously insisted upon: the SAVE Act, the grossest of the gross that would require proof of citizenship to vote in federal elections. Erin, much like abortion after birth, it's already illegal.
Yeah, it's
extremely
already
rare.
There's laws. There's
For
laws about it.
non-citizens to vote in the U.S. elections. The SAVE Act would also, not so coincidentally, disenfranchise millions of eligible voters who do not have access to proof of citizenship, including, wait for it, 90% of married women whose last name on their birth certificate does not match the last name on their driver's license. What do you think? Is this protecting women at a level never seen before?
Protecting us from the how annoying it is to like find a parking spot outside of your local voting center. Protecting us from like democracy, which is such a bummer. I just kind of would prefer to not have any decisions to make. I just want to sit there and have some men make them for me. I think that'd be great.
So you know what I did when I was poking around on the old SAVE Act? I was like, if I needed my birth certificate, do I know where it is? I think so, but I'm not sure. Had to text my dad, see if it's still in his Rolodex, his little file of facts thing.
Is it a fireproof box?
You know it is.
What is it? We don't have fireproof boxes this generation. I feel like
no. That's why, Erin. This is exactly why. Through college, through many moves to many cities and many campaigns, I was like, Pop, why don't you hang on to my birth certificate?
You've got the fireproof box. Keep it in there.
You got the fireproof box, Pop. And I was like, what if I needed it? And so I tried in New York State to get a duplicate birth certificate. It's $45. And let me tell you something. It's real fucking creepy because you go to the NewYorkState.gov website, but then it takes you to a not.gov website where you're supposed to put in your information. And then I started getting all these scammy emails asking for my social security number. So I'm just saying this is fraught on so many levels that, of course, they have never thought through. But at least it's not happening for now.
I just got to say, look, I didn't change my last name when I got married because for professional reasons and also for laziness and also like a distant third feminism reasons. Like number one, my job. Number two, lazy. Anyway, I didn't change my last name, which means that all matches and I wouldn't have a hard time voting. But like, listen, guys. The people who would have the most difficulty obtaining their original birth certificates are probably the people that are the older married women. So like, you're really like, I mean, all women should be allowed to vote, whatever. But like, you're punching yourselves in the balls a little bit here, guys, because women who have the same last names as the names on their birth certificates are unmarried, or they're the type of woman who did not change her last name when she got married. And how do you think we vote? How do you think we
feel about you?
How do you think we vote, guys? And I would be like extra salty if like, I don't know, my mom wasn't able to vote because she, can't get access to like her birth certificate or whatever. Like, I would vote extra hard against Republic. I mean, I vote as hard as I can.
Punch that hole real hard in the ballot.
I would vote so hard against them. But they would really, it doesn't seem like it was very thought through.
Most of their stuff isn't. It's all this messaging bullshit because guess what? It was never going to be included. But Trump doubles down and then he gets the loyalty test, right? MTG, again, on the picket line. She's like front and center with all reporters saying how Mike Johnson better figure it out and this is what Trump wants and it's so good for America. Never saying how it's so good for America. But most of their plans don't like come to a conclusion. They're just like, this is what we're going to do. We don't know how yet, but we just want you to know that we'll figure it out once we're in office.
It's trust me, bro.
Exactly.
as a campaign and policy strategy. Trust me, bro. I don't know. You've been pretty bad at all this in the past. Yeah, it is good that the SAVE Act was eventually dropped from the continuing resolution. I am a little bit bummed that the continuing resolution is going to keep it open, the government open until December 20th, because it would have been really funny to see the U.S. Capitol turned into a spirit Halloween
Okay.
during the government
Honestly,
shutdown.
yes. And I actually thought this all the way through. I was like, I don't know. It kind of, if Biden were running, I think would hurt him more than it would hurt Kamala. You know what I mean? Like, because he's president, he's top of the ticket, and also in charge of negotiating for all intents and purposes. I always kind of get a little excited to see things go over a cliff, which is deranged.
You've got beltway poisoning.
I do. But Erin, you forget that you are podcasting with the person who wrote the scripts for the White House operators when we did shut the government down. So I get a little adrenaline rush when I hear this about to happen. But the truth is, everybody thinks that it's going to hurt one party more than the other. And it always hurts everybody because it just shows that Washington is so broken. So it is very good that it did not happen for a million reasons.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think we've seen this whole, to bring it back to the SAVE Act, we've seen this whole rhetoric around not allowing women to vote or like repealing the 19th Amendment from like people, self-styled right-wing provocateurs who have like two jokes, and that's one of them. And half of those right-wing provocateurs were just recently unmasked as being Russian sock puppets. So, how seriously can we take them? But it is not untrue that Republicans would do a lot better if fewer women voted.
Absolutely.
And so I would not put it past them to have this be the sort of first, like, flailing stab at it. But they never stop, is the thing. Like, the first one might go...
they keep coming back.
Exactly. Like, I think about the personhood thing. The
100%.
In 2010 in Mississippi, there was a public referendum that would have granted personhood to fertilized embryos. And it failed spectacularly in the most red of red states in 2010. It got like laughed out of the election. People were like, this is ridiculous. What a ridiculous thing to propose. And then, 13, 14 years later, the Supreme Court of the state of Alabama essentially declares embryos to be people. And IVF clinics in the state of Alabama still haven't, even though they passed a sort of a roughshod, like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a half-assed, like, oh no, IVF people can't be prosecuted for destroying embryos. It doesn't really give clinics the peace of mind to continue operation. Regardless, personhood is a thing now. It is a thing that is in the national conversation, and it took 14 years to get there, but it's there. So, like, preventing women from voting by making people produce their original birth certificate and have the birth certificate name match the name on your driver's license. It sounds a little like, messy now, but like, you got to keep an eye on these fuckers. They never give up.
Because also, they don't actually listen to their voters, right? Every time there's like an overwhelming majority on something, they're like, listen, we think you guys misunderstood. We're going to tear this apart line by line. And we're going to destroy your brains to the point that you finally cry uncle and you're like, okay, fucking fine. Maybe you know better than me. But for the most part, their voters are rejecting these crazy ideas.
Yeah, absolutely. You're listening to Hysteria, the podcast for people who legitimately are nostalgic for buying school supplies. And when they are in Target during back to school season and before the Halloween stuff is out, they do wander through the back to school supplies section just to get a sense.
What are the new crayons doing? What are the new markers doing?
Do we have pencil
and you know
boxes?
What? I actually bought myself some new paper clips, brightly colored this year.
Ooh, that's a lot of fun.
Feels good.
Love the pencil boxes. My older daughter is not old enough to need a backpack, but she bought a backpack anyway, and she carries an empty backpack to preschool.
So cute because the backpack is so big that if you put stuff in it, she'd probably tip over.
We got a little backpack that doesn't fit anything in it.
Oh.
So it's the other version. So it's like a tiny, cute little backpack.
Cute.
Anyway, let's talk about school choice. School choice is a misnomer, and I can't believe we're letting them get away with.
We're not.
What it
That's
is.
why we're talking it.
Right. I wish that, how like people stopped calling pro-life people pro-life and started calling them anti-choice and anti-abortion, which is what it should be because it's more descriptive. School choice, we should say people who are anti-public schools. anti-public schools, dismantling public education has long been a priority for Republicans in this country, but they've called it school choice, and so that's what we're going to call it for simplicity's sake. It's code for using public money and alternative options to your local public schools, usually in the form of vouchers, education savings accounts, or tax credits to use toward private schools or homeschooling. A homecoming, that'd be great. Homecoming would be off the chain if the government was paying for it. However, as we have seen in states like Arizona, Ohio, and Texas, these programs don't fucking work. They're terrible and they don't work. They're complete bullshit. Okay, Alyssa, where is it on the ballot this year?
Erin, it is on the ballot in 3 states. In Kentucky, voters are deciding whether to allow state funds, clarify, your tax dollars, to be used for non-public education, such as charter schools. In Colorado, the vote is about the right to school choice at all, which could be a stepping stone to starting a school voucher program. Nebraska, on the other hand, has a citizen-led initiative on the ballot, a veto referendum that would repeal Legislative Bill 1402, which authorizes the state treasurer to administer $10 million in scholarship funding for private and religious schools beginning in fiscal year 24-25. So let's talk about why quote-unquote school choice programs can be the Trojan horse of education equity.
Yeah, it is a Trojan horse, and it absolutely sucks. And I am biased here, and I think, Alyssa, you're biased. Let's show our biases.
I am absolutely
100% biased. My sister's a teacher. My uncle is a teacher. My aunt is a teacher. My mom was a teacher and then a high school administrator. Like teachers all the way down in my family.
And Erin, we must always be suspicious and deeply suspect of any program, the voucher program, that was born out of people opposed to desegregating schools in the 1950s and 60s.
Yes.
Okay?
Racism.
Origin story.
Racism also brought us the Electoral College. And several other institutions in the U.S. that are now we're like, this sucks. Why can't we get rid of it? It's racist. Racism.
It's racist. It's
people,
totally racist.
Yes, people didn't want to send their kids to school with black kids in places like Boston.
A lot of places.
Yeah, a lot of places. And so instead they wanted to send their kids to religious schools, but the problem was that they couldn't afford it. And so the state was like, well, here, you can. You can actually.
Come on, Catholic school kids, we got you.
Yeah. The thing that really gets me about school vouchers is that there has been so much scholarship done on whether or not this actually improves student outcomes.
And it doesn't.
It does not.
Nope.
You're not helping your kids.
It is like so clear in the data. This isn't like you and I seeing what we want to see. It is researched to shit, and it does not help kids.
It does not help kids. It essentially is a way to redistribute tax dollars to religious institutions and private for-profit enterprises that are in the charter school game. And it's really gross.
And also, Erin, it mostly benefits. This is the thing. All the Republicans put this program out and they're like, you guys, we're being benevolent. We're trying to help low-income kids. And it's bullshit because most of the kids helped are wealthy and they are already in private school.
And in some places, what happened was that the schools just increased their tuition the amount that the vouchers were. So it didn't really save anybody money, but it did make this, it just was a direct pipe from the tax coffers to the school's bottom line. They just increased the cost that amount of money.
And they put up these bullshit things again where they're helping inner city kids or they're helping rural kids. Well, guess what? Most private schools, Erin, even if the kids could afford the tuition through the voucher program, they can't get to the schools because most schools don't provide transportation. So again, it's one of these things like we were just talking about where at first blush, quote unquote, school choice, well, that sounds like a great idea. You know, and then you get into it and you're like, oh, we're giving money to religious schools. Also worth noting, most of these charter schools, private schools, religious schools, they do not have the scrutiny that public schools do. So teachers do not need the same level of education
or
standardized tests or pay.
They get really hosed in private schools.
There's a total lack of accountability in so much of this. And it's really bad.
Yeah, and not only does it not benefit students, and does it primarily benefit wealthy families and the institutions that behind the schools, it bankrupts states. Like in
Yes.
Arizona has a voucher
Bonkers.
system that it's considered a model for many states, but it's only been going on for 2 years. It's a universal voucher program that's been going on for 2 years. The state has gone hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, and they've had to make cuts in other areas.
Like water.
Huh.
Erin, they're not cutting money from things. When most states go over budget and create huge deficits with voucher programs, where do they take the money? They take it from public schools, further eroding the education provided in public schools. And Arizona was just like, it's like so incredible. A state that is so reliant on water, and they cut millions of dollars from programs that were going to help sort getting more water to people in Arizona. What do you need? What are our bodies made mostly of? Like water?
Money.
So weird.
Money.
Yeah. I forgot money.
Thirsty people work harder. No, they don't. There's also a ProPublica investigation into the voucher program in Ohio. This is some shit. Education vouchers in Ohio often subsidize families who are already paying for private school, and some schools require their families to apply for vouchers. So they just exploit the system. And it sort of feels like that's by design. Like lawmakers have plausible deniability to be like, oh, that's never how it was intended. But really, actually, it kind of was. Because the people that are pushing for these are people that will benefit from them monetarily, and those are schools and religious organizations. Oh, the veto referendum in Nebraska will reverse the state's plan, which is cool.
Good.
Like the
That's
voters were like, hey.
And I feel like Nebraska's kind of on it these days, so I'm hopeful.
I'm hopeful too. I just want to know, Alyssa, like with all the data that we have, and I don't expect you to have a definitive answer here, but we have data that shows it's not good. It doesn't benefit students. It exploits the workers within the private school system. It doesn't benefit states. It can bankrupt states, and is often taken advantage of by religious organizations and entities behind charter schools. So, like, how are states still getting away with these programs? Like, why are people still like, okay, that sounds, it didn't work for anybody else, but it might work for us? Like, how are people getting away with it?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess on the one hand, they have Republican governors or state legislatures or people like Donald Trump running for president who tout these programs, which I guess gives them like air cover if they say they want to keep doing it. I don't know if they're trying to just run public education out of their states, basically. It's totally nonsensical why. I mean, it's right. It's the definition of insanity. They keep doing the same thing over and over in states and running into huge deficits, having to take money from other vitally important programs. I think in Arizona, they also took money away from the highway improvement program around Phoenix, which is like desperately needed.
Oh my God.
It doesn't make sense except racism.
It doesn't make sense except racism, but also like there is something so like bloodlessly capitalist and crass about this.
Yeah, and their donors are benefiting.
Right. Public schools have been something that profit-hungry, soulless capitalists have wanted to be able to extract profit from forever. Education is already a way for, to extract money from people. But they want to make it so that in order for your kid to get an education, you need to pay even more. Childcare is even more expensive. There are places in Missouri that I think only have school 4 days a week now.
Yeah, I read that too.
Yeah, and also to me feeds into this larger dark trend of trying to make it basically impossible to have two parents that work and have children.
Absolutely, because when you take away the fifth school day in Missouri, who's taking care of the kids on the fifth day?
Probably mom.
Mom,
to be honest.
Right.
And it feels like a part of a very insidious move to make it so that somebody's got to stay home, and It's probably not going to be dad. It's overall incredibly insidious, but I think the worst part of it is the sexism at the root of all of this. I think that it is really disrespectful and sexist toward teaching profession. And I say it's sexist toward the teaching profession because 75% of teachers are women. And I think that disrespect for the teaching profession is sexist at its root. And it's disrespectful toward caregiving parents, and who are mostly also women. At the root of this is like racism, the ability for people to send their kids to schools that are not integrated and have the government pay for it, and sexism, like a non-respect for the work of teaching and the work of caregiving. But I'm on a soapbox now. For more information on the no good, very bad school voucher issues, we should direct you to Vote Save America. We always talk about it. They've got information to help you. If you live in one of those states, you want to be one of the people that keeps school vouchers out.
Save public school education.
And we would be remiss, Alyssa, to close out a back-to-school special without talking about some fuckery going on in North Carolina. North Carolina.
What the fuck?
What the fuck? More fuckery. Not just Mark Robinson. It's like...
No, don't let him distract you from all the other nonsense going on there right now. So, Erin, in addition to education issues like school choice, there are also important state and local education seats up for election. North Carolina Superintendent of Public Education race is happening between Michelle Morrow, a far-right extremist who participated in the January 6th insurrection.
Okay,
and is adamantly anti-public school, homeschooled her kids. Okay.
Oh, God.
And Democrat Mo Green, the former superintendent of North Carolina's third largest school district. So first, let me pause here. Person who hates public schools, homeschooled her kids. Person who's the superintendent of the third largest school district. In terms of qualifications, just flagging that as a baseline, right? An example of how batshit she is Erin, we didn't have to go back in time. She just did this like last week. She tweeted that LGBTQ+, that the plus stood for pedophilia. Okay.
What?
Okay. Stood for pedophilia. She also... Yep, that's who wants to run the schools, Erin. She also tweeted that Barack Obama and Joe Biden should be publicly executed. That was not that long ago either.
Why didn't she get a visit from the FBI? That seems...
Not sure. Did they think she was joking? Because I'm guessing she wasn't.
Yeah, that's not... You can't joke. Yeah, that's not... You can't joke about that.
And Erin, she wasn't just at January 6th. This person live streamed herself at the Save America rally that took place before the insurrection to be like, I'm here. Here I am. Now, I am a little bit joking with you, but this is actually very scary, and hope all of our listeners are paying attention, because right now, they're Green and Morrow are like within the margin of error. They're neck and neck.
Okay. Think about it
Mo
this way.
Green, North Carolina. Elect Mo Green.
Would you elect an arsonist to be the fire chief? Then you should not vote for this fucking woman. I don't care.
It's insane. I watched videos with, I had seen stuff, but I really went down the rabbit hole last night. She is a mean, vicious person. I want to be like, who would see any of these interactions and think that's who I want in charge of my kids' education?
Yeah,
she will voucher the whole state faster than you could say boo. I mean, it is so clear to me she is not there to make schools great again.
Yeah, I would say when I've seen the footage I've seen of her, I get this feeling in my body like, you know when you see like a bat during the day and you're like, that's got rabies. It's got rabies. Got to stay away from it.
Absolutely.
It's like, nope. I get some, there's
back
a visceral.
away.
Yep, will bite. Do not want. Get away. Yeah, this is huge. And just so everyone has some numbers, North Carolina ranks 48th out of 50th for per pupil expenditure, and Morrow wants to reject federal funding, which is like really, I don't know. You know, that old saying, boys go to Jupiter to get more stupider. I feel like all the southern states are in competition with each other to be the place where boys go to get more stupider. And if Morrow wins, North Carolina will be the place to go get more stupider.
I mean, I can't even imagine the things that she could possibly do. She doesn't believe in humanity. Like, how could she be in charge of schools? It is truly mind-bending.
Yeah. Okay. North Carolina voters, you've got to get out and you've got to keep this lady.
This is a red alert. She's a red alert.
She is a red alert. She is a bat during the day. And now we have some quick hits from states where governors have made moves to protect their schools. So this week in California, Governor Gavin Newsom signed the Phone Free Schools Act, which hell yes.
Yes.
It requires all public and charter schools to reintroduce rules limiting or prohibiting smartphones. And in Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey released updated guidance on how to address hate and bias motivated incidents in schools. Massachusetts also introduced $1.34 million in genocide education grants and $338,000 in hate crime prevention grants to local schools and educational agencies. Imagine that. Lawmakers who are actually trying to make their schools a better and safer place. I also want to shout out the California AG's office that has been really aggressively going after attempts by local school boards to mandate that trans kids be outed to their parents. So California, not to brag.
Brag.
We're on top of
I
it.
don't feel like I can brag that much about New York right now, so you just like go crazy in California.
It's not a perfect place, but
He's trying.
We're trying. We're moving in the right direction. We're moving in a good direction. Oh, and Alyssa, this is one of
What?
your pet issues. Let's close
What?
this. Let's close back to school out. Clear the lists. We talk about this
Erin,
every year.
There are so many bad things going on, but there is something you can do to make yourself feel great. Here on Hysteria, we're so grateful for the inspiring teachers who support their students unconditionally and do everything they can to empower kids. Because of that, we wanted to plug Clear the List, an initiative dedicated to helping teachers get the school supplies on their Amazon wish list. Another plug, Jeff Bezos. We think so
Hey.
much of you.
Hey.
We think so much of you. If you just
You
went
could-
ahead and cleared all the lists, it would
You're-
be
Amazing.
what you spend on toilet paper in a year, I'm sure. I mean,
Jeff,
just
your ex-wife, Mackenzie Scott, is absolutely kicking your ass in winning the divorce
Everywhere.
and winning hearts and minds. If Jeff Bezos just cleared all the lists, he would
Yes.
slightly gain on her. Slightly gain on her.
I would think he was a much better person. It just seems like such a truly lovely thing to do. Schools and governments can only provide classrooms with so many teachers end up spending money out of their own pockets to supply their students. So please donate art supplies and books and things. We'll include the link in our show notes.